click on the viewing of, okay, there we go. Man, ruined the flow. That was good flow. That was a good job, Lester. Okay.
I should probably sit a bit further back. Just
That's cool.
Yeah, that's probably a little better.
Well, that background looks really good on, good. Okay. Cool beans. So please elaborate on your international endeavors.
Yeah, so first of all, we have the app that's currently we were working on. Hopefully we can launch into open beta by the start of 2024. But what we do that's basically connecting teachers to students as well as some various other like sight reading games or whatever in there. But the main purpose of it is to connect, first of all, the underprivileged students to find like volunteer teachers, as well as finding professional teachers to help out more advanced students that just may not have a good local teacher in their area. And we're working to make it very simple where you can just press a few buttons on whatever your preferences are for whatever instrument you want, what you're looking to get out the lessons, kind of like the price range you're looking for, and be able to match you up to a mentor like fairly quickly. We are also looking to partner with some mentorship organizations to work on that as well in the future. So, and then we also have the International Low Brass Festival, where each year we have various artists perform. Our first annual one was a few weeks ago. So next year there'll be quite a few modifications, but this year it was a fully online festival where we had around 30 hours of content. It was accessible on YouTube for everyone to watch, and kind of allow to give the festival experience for those who may not be able to go to the normal festivals usually.
Awesome. So when you do, let's see how to dive further. I love that you did the festival online and you're providing that content. Where can, I guess a side note to that, and I'll edit this part out down the road here. Would you be willing to provide that content onto Farm for Dreams under your profile that I'm setting up for you, so they can access it without having to leave the website and watch your YouTube videos and stuff like that? You'll still get the viewer counts and stuff like that too.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely just embed whatever the YouTube videos in there. We're also going to release like many clips from the festival, like throughout the next year actually, onto YouTube, and you could just embed the clips onto wherever you need it to be.
Awesome. Who did you have show up and provide instruction this past festival?
In terms of artists?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so during this festival we had around 30 different artists. So that ranges from artists like so that ranges from artists like on trombone, you got Christopher Bill, you have like Denson Paul Pollard, you have Dunwoody Merble, you have artists like Adam Fry, John Rojak. Yeah, we had several different artists.
Awesome.
Give master class or whatever there. That ranges from the top end soloists to freelance musicians like Christopher Bill and Ben Tiovo to college professors. And we also had ensembles like the Slow Car Quartet, the trombone choir from the Eastman School of Music, the Low Brass Collective from the University of North Georgia as well.
That's really awesome. So let's get back into a little bit more about you, Lester. I know that you're going into you said senior year in high school, correct?
Yes.
So when did you start playing all the instruments that you play? Specifically euphonium.
Yeah, so euphonium was not actually my first low brass instrument. It was trombone, which I started back in 4th grade. I actually started picking up euphonium around freshman year of high school. So I always taught euphonium to beginners. Like, I actually knew the fingers all along. I just never played much myself. So, like, I just played a little bit, but I never played much until around freshman year of high school. So I was teaching both euphonium and trombone to many, like as a volunteer to many students in the area, but I didn't really start playing it much myself until around freshman year of high school.
So why did you start? Why did you start with trombone? What got you into the band world?
I mean, so I mean, I already played piano. I just felt like it was something that I just kind of wanted to expand into when I was in elementary school. I mean, if I felt like it would be like a fairly easy new skill to pick up since I already had some degree of musical knowledge. Back in elementary school, I was obviously not as integrated into everything I did, but yeah, I just felt like I just wanted to kind of just pick up a new musical instrument, and that was something I felt like it was fairly easy to do. And I did pick low brass because I just felt like there weren't enough low brass players. That's probably not something that most people would do, but that was kind of the mindset back then.
So who's your first teacher then for like private lessons and stuff like that? Did you have a private
Yeah,
lesson?
so here's the thing. Here's the thing. I actually never had a teacher outside of just older students that helped me.
Okay, so who are those students that really impacted your first kind of formative years playing trombone, low brass?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of middle school, I mean, it's just there are many yeah, there's been many older students who just helped me. I can't who just helped me along the way. It just there's never really been anyone that's actually consistently work with me on my playing. But it's more of just playing with a lot of older players than anything.
Cool. That's really cool. It kind of forces you to raise the bar for yourself and have accountability for just taking ownership with that. That's really cool. So, you know, our initial conversation, we were talking about dream jobs and stuff like that, and you're really into science and you've done a lot of research and I know one of the questions I was asking on the questionnaire was, when did you first realize that you wanted to pursue this as a potential career as far as music goes? And then you took it toward the Low Brass Network. With that being said, where you're at with the Low Brass Network and you're going into the senior year, and by the time that this is going to be live, you already have started your senior year in high school, which is really exciting. And I can't wait to see your journey and which school you eventually sign up to go to do your all that really awesome scientific research. What was really the initial kickoff into the science world? Was it before or after you started playing band?
It was much after actually. So and it's so I feel like a lot of it is actually I'm mostly interested in how biology intersects with economics, or in other words, kind of public health, like the public health policy rule. So the reason why I'm interested in that sort of research is because I know a lot of it actually relates to many of the projects that we do in terms of low brass network. Because it's and by running this international nonprofit organization where we're kind of trying to expand low brass enrollment, where we're trying to provide more opportunities. A lot of that actually, and in a broader world, a lot of that actually just relates to how the public health world works, where we're looking at strategies to improve worldwide health, where we're looking to places where we can put funding towards raising public health in those areas, and just many and just the much of the research behind that. It's those two things integrate together very well. In the beginning, I mean, a few years ago, I was actually looking towards potentially majoring in music. However, due to some medical issues, that never came to fruition. But yeah, I mean, a lot of how public health research, which is a lot of what I do, it integrates with low brass network.
Can you give me can you give our those that are attending this summit, what was that you had spoken about the research that you've done on the overall health inside our instruments, the toxins. What was the research called, and what did you find out? Just a little synopsis.
Yeah, so in simple terms, we did a research project with several others in low brass network regarding the toxicity inside low brass instruments, because and the main purpose behind that is because we experienced and we received so many questions wondering why did low brass players cough so much when playing? And these big instruments, there has to be so many contaminants inside them. There has to be so much bacteria inside them. And yeah, in general, we found that there were certain types of greases and slide creams that were just not being maintained properly. We found out that you definitely have to wash your instrument quite a bit, rather than people just leaving their instrument just out sitting for like 2 years straight, like out in the open. And then as the grease builds up, there will be a lot of bacteria and other things that you just don't want in there. And that's a general trend. We found some brands are generally worse with that compared to others, but yeah, we have a full paper that will probably be linked somewhere here for full details. But yeah, we definitely found quite a few interesting things about just why there's so many more contaminants and bacteria in low brass instruments compared to other low brass instruments, and the harmful effects that can have, and how we can potentially prevent those from happening.
It'd be interesting to see what our audience would say, if they'd be even honest on how many times they clean their instruments per year. What's your guidelines, Lester? How often should we be cleaning our instruments?
And so definitely you do want to put your instrument in a bath, probably around a couple of times per year. That would be
once
ideal.
A quarter, or
I'm probably just like once every 4 to 6 months is good enough. Without overdoing it, or like water won't really cause much damage to your instrument, but either way you don't want to overdo it, because you kind of don't want to finish to fall off either. But yeah, as long as you can wash through it 4 to 6 months and just don't use an excessive amount of grease. And for trombone players, do make sure you integrate some water into integrate a very good amount of water into whatever slide cream or even slide lubricant that you are using. We found that the general recommendation of, if you're using slide cream, add water to it. If you're using slide lubricant, no need to add water. From what we've seen, even if you use slide lubricant, it's just really good to just add some water, just to kind of make sure that the slide lubricant does not get stuck in there, which is what happens a lot of time. So that will actually go out the spit valve eventually. So yeah, so that's pretty much what we found. You just have to be consistent with lubricating your instrument while still adding water in it, and just throw your instrument in the bath a couple of times per year. Which many players do not do that unless they're professionals.
It'd be really cool. I think I should. I know there's some videos as to how to give your instrument a bath. I don't recommend this with woodwinds at all. This is just for brass instruments. So French horns are a bit more unique, but this is specifically for euphoniums. And with Lester being on with trombones, tubas, low brass, and the impact that he's creating in his local community and those of his followers and such like that, I'd really highly recommend take and read, seeing what your highlights, what you got out of his research, and put the comments below. That'd be really awesome. So getting back to some of the other questions. So when you're going through middle school and learning trombone first, then teaching others how to play, how did scales and arpeggios, long tones, all the kind of the basic warm-ups that as artists and some high schools, I guess, high schoolers go through this routine that we set up and establish. When did that become a practice in your teaching others or even adapting for yourself?
Yeah, so I personally believe that it's always going to be important to have a consistent warm-up routine that you can do every day. It's just finding a warm-up routine that works for you instead of just going out here, warming up and playing random notes, which I was definitely guilty of at a younger age. But yeah, I mean, especially maybe definitely work on some skills. So that would obviously depend on your skill level. So for my general warm-up routine, I would allow time to start off by playing a scale, playing the next scale, and then slowly speeding up, and then just like jumping between the arpeggios as well. And then also for young low brass players too. But the most important thing when you warm up for scales, I recommend doing a lot of long tones because it's just you will need to do that in order to figure out your intonation, which is a big problem with all instruments, but very easy to mess up your intonation with brass instruments. Just because a lot of time a lot of time you have to know to for euphonium you have to know to move your tuning slide for certain notes. Just because they're not just because it's this fingering or like this slide position for trombone does not mean that it will play in tune. A lot of that will depend on slight adjustments. For example, for euphonium, you will need to move your tuning slide for certain notes that may be a little sharper flat, so you have to figure that out through long tones. You're not going to, it's significantly harder to figure out if you just speed through all the notes. And you also may be a little flatter or a little sharper on a certain day. If you're playing outdoors, that could also depend on weather. So long tones are always very important for that. And then in terms of trombone, there are many times where you would need to adjust like your slide a bit. It's not just third position. You always be at that exact third position place. You do have to adjust your slide a bit. So yeah, so I work on long tones quite a lot. Yeah, I have a consistent warm-up routine that consists of different skills and arpeggios that are very important for our playing.
So did you start to apply them like toward the beginning of your high school seasons in marching band and concert band and such? Or did you start adapting those, let's say your 8th grade year?
Yes. So I mostly, so actually for my 8th grade year, it was, we were in COVID. So yeah, during COVID, I really did not do much because I was not playing in a band setting, so I just did not really do much proper warm-ups, which I highly do not recommend. But when I did go back to band singing, I played in a trombone choir, marching band, and a concert band. So for the concert band, we were pretty much just tuning at like A is equal to 440. Marching band, we would need to adjust based on the weather. And for trombone choir, we usually like to tune it, trombone choir a little bit sharp. So we just have to do these long tones to figure out what is good in each setting. And we do have to change our tuning depending on the setting as well. So that became important by then.
So you mentioned tuning and in regards to where your location is, as far as practicing, not necessarily during COVID, but when you do practice or when you have practiced in the past, what kind of tips could a beginner euphonium player take advantage of when prepping their space in maybe their bedroom, their living room, where they want to like have a good, nice place to practice, get to know their sound, their intonation, and be free?
So I assume it's just asking for any practice tips.
Practice tips on like how to really set the stage or set the room up for success. Kind of no distractions, or did you practice with the TV on? How did you really evaluate your intonation when you were practicing by yourself at home in your room or in your living room, stuff like that?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, obviously get rid of any distractions that may affect you. So I won't say get rid of your phone because you do need it as a tuner, but turn off notifications. And then turn off like whatever messages that you'll get, just like pause everything except for your tuner and metronome on there. Or if you need to record for some reason, there's like camera or like or whatever you use for recording. So actually, number one thing, get rid of distractions because it's very easy to distract yourself while playing, especially as a beginner. And eventually you like once you play for a while, I do find that many people eventually do kind of get into a flow state and don't, and even the distractions theories won't care about it. But when you're a beginner, I feel like when it's just so easy to give up when playing, just like kind of like messing up the same thing a few times, a lot of beginners would just go straight onto a mobile device, which is not the greatest idea. So honestly, I would always recommend having, if you don't have access to whatever phone, like on any device, just have a tuner with you the whole time so you can still keep track of what notes are sharp or flat. You can, and then also there are many different apps that allow for the analyzation of your playing, so it can show you how loud you're playing or how soft you're playing compared to other notes. You can really make sure that you're hitting those dynamics correctly and that you're phrasing correctly as well.
So what things do you know now, especially through the festival that you just hosted a few weeks back? Now, by the time that this is that this drops, be a couple months now, and hopefully be able to pre-register for your next year's festival, which would be really awesome. What three things did you learn at the festival that you wish you would have kind of learned and applied to teach your students when you were taking that role of kind of the coach and the mentor of those around you in the middle school level?
Yeah, so the first thing is that a lot of the time there needs to be like personalized.
Okay, I think I lost you.
Yeah, so first thing I would say is there needs to be kind of individualized help, especially for low brass players. Especially when the band director is just there giving instructions, and when there are certain instruments that are playing many more notes compared to low brass instruments, the band director just kind of a lot of time would end up overlooking the low brass instruments and not really helping the low brass players improve, which obviously makes a lot of the younger low brass players just feel very left out when there's like 20 foots in an elementary school band, there's like 2 low brass players in total, right? So a lot of time you do need to give more to low brass players like individualized help rather than like when a teacher is like kind of addressing like the woodwind players in general. And yeah, so
So
a lot of the time low brass players just don't give it enough recognition in the lower level bands. There's never really any parts in the music that's particularly appealing to low brass players. So sadly, leading to the second thing is just kind of the way we want to market low brass instruments to younger students in general. So this would be for those elementary school and middle school band directors out there, or even some high school band directors for those are getting to low brass again at a slightly older age. One thing is that it's many, and we heard from some artists that lived in the UK that it's even when going up to these elementary schoolers and kind of primary schools there, demonstrating the euphonium, for example, like no one's interested in joining, because and we feel a lot of the time it's because they're playing like those common excerpts for Euphonium and tuba that's not really that we know to appreciate just because we've played for a long time. But these elementary schools, it's not particularly appealing to them. What they do see on internet all the time is all these cool lines on piano, all these lines on the violin, all these lines on the wood that are playing like whatever contemporary pieces are out there. So it might be good to kind of target elementary schools, at least when performing in front of them, to play more contemporary music that would be more appealing to them rather than common excerpts for euphonium, but elementary schools haven't heard of. So, and then third thing I would say for band directors out there, going to low brass is it's always again, this kind of goes back to the first point, but I would say to ensure that there are multiple, if you have access to it, try to ensure that there are multiple low brass players in each band that you have. If you have one low brass player in your entire band, which I know for some of the smaller schools that may be an issue, but like some of the smaller schools will have multiple bands and they just have like one low brass player in each. But that makes it very, very difficult for low brass players to actually learn from each other. Just by like so much of my learning in low brass came from playing with people that sat right next to me. But when they play a completely different instrument, it makes it a million times harder. So I did not really improve much at low brass until I started playing with a bunch of people around me. So that's something I would highly recommend trying to do if possible.
That's pretty awesome. So recognition and building a bigger section through marketing the low brass and making it relatable to what those younger generations are watching and consuming online, mostly because this YouTube age and such like that. That's really cool. A lot of food for thought there. So what kind of competitions besides all state and or all region and solo ensemble have you been made aware of or even participated in while you're going through middle school and the first part of your high school years?
Yeah, so in terms of competitions, like for example, the International Trombone Association, the International Euphonium Tuba Association, they hold the most well-recognized competitions in the low brass world. In addition, for us low brass network, we're also planning to start holding competitions next year for some underprivileged students as well. So those are the first competitions that come to mind. There's also many local competitions that may happen in your area, but most of those are only in these areas that are very like musically rich in the first place. That are some of those like capital cities in Europe. If you see places like Copenhagen, Stockholm, London, Budapest, like those places, you will see some local competitions being held there. But those are generally those capital cities in Europe are generally very musically rich because they have those, because that's where the top end European orchestras are. And in the U.S., you might see some regional ones in New York. You might see some regional ones in Texas. Texas is a large market here, but yeah. So these local competitions, they really only happen in musically rich places. So for underprivileged community, or just like actually just most people in general, you won't have one of these local competitions. I know that during COVID, there's some organizations that held international competitions, including like ranging from local competition that decided to expand to international just for COVID because it was online, or just some like musical accessory companies or musical instrument companies that decided to do a competition. But I participated in some of those, but they were pretty much during COVID only. So yeah, I mean, in terms of students, I would just recommend doing the all state, doing the all regionals or whatever you have offered there. And then if you are lucky enough to be in an area with these like local competitions, definitely enter them. But if you're looking to go to the next level, I mean ITA and ITEA, they offer competitions, but obviously those are for more advanced students, as well as I know the U.S. Army Band has some, and there are some other pretty large organizations that offer them. But you could definitely go look around and find those on the internet fairly easily.
Awesome. So when you're still on your horn majority of the time before this happened to you, what elements have helped you be more established on the horn while you're away from your instrument? Like, have you been working, did you work on your buzzing, your breathing, your singing? Did you do voice stretching? There's all sorts of different types of segments when you think off the instrument. How did you prepare yourself to become a better player performer while your instrument was put up?
Okay, so there's a fairly simple answer to this for me. It's just I carried a mouthpiece around with me. So yeah, and even on
Even in the school hallways?
vacation or things like that. What?
Even in the school hallways?
Not in school hallways, but yeah, but I would have a mouthpiece in my backpack though. So so yeah, I would just buzz like whenever it's convenient to. So whether even while I don't have my instrument. So I was pretty much like in terms of buzzing, I was pretty much able to get in like a solid hour and a half per day, even if I'm only getting in like half an hour to an hour of practice per day.
You're still putting a lip to your mouthpiece. That's really cool. That's really cool. So as far as articulation goes in phrasing, what kind of aha moments have you had during your rehearsing, personally or while others were around you, that you took note of that really clicked for you, as far as how to triple tongue, double tongue, or flutter tongue, or
Yeah, so for some reason, like some of those like extended tongue techniques were never too difficult for me. I mean, I was just like kind of just like saying out like the syllables, like just kind of like saying out like the syllables, like double tongue and triple tongue. And that just clicked for me right away. For majority of people, it did not click for them. But
so what
yeah,
are your syllables by chance?
I I just I just do potty top for triple tongue. So I mean, I guess I just like practiced like so many pieces that had triple tongue in them. So like, many of the harder trombone solos out there. That I started practicing like starting my middle school days, and then eventually also doing Euphonium as well. That just made triple tongue really easy to me. So I would just say you just have to practice it quite a bit to get it down.
So
That's pretty much what happens for me.
So talking about your mouthpiece, and I'm assuming you're working your articulation on while you're buzzing also. I mean, it just go hand in hand. So that sounds like that is one of the ways that your family supported you pursuing music for the last, what, 7, 8, 10 years, basically. What else have they done to show you support, and how can other parents that are watching this, hopefully with their child, with their student, or have that extension, how would they support their student better?
I mean, and in terms of instruments, I mean, I was
Practicing and
like
stuff like
when,
that.
for example, when I got my first instrument, I was very lucky for my parents to be able to pay for it. But I mean, as a parent, and if you're in terms of buying instruments, I would stress that first of all, I would try to I would try to maybe spend a little bit more time trying to actually compare prices, actually find and do a bit of research regarding the instruments as well. Maybe help your child. And so this is first of all in terms of instrument buying. Definitely try to do something if you are on the budget and still want to get a good instrument. Definitely do your research to try to find good instrument for whatever price point you're at instead of just going to one place and then just taking whatever they got at your price range. And the second thing is also just, I'd say the most important thing is what if the student is trying to kind of figure out some sort of is trying to figure out some sort of technique or figure out some sort of way to play. It would be great if the parents can kind of get engaged in terms of like how doing the research on YouTube, especially if it's a younger student that they might struggle with that. And yeah, so parents could help in that way if the students do not have many resources and you're just trying to and the students are not really like at the stage where they are competent with searching things out that well. Like doing research is great for them if they need help. I mean, also helping them record if they need to. That's something that's also good. But yeah, so just helping students do research and then kind of also helping them kind of find opportunities for instruments. So enrolling them in, so like they may not know about like these all-state opportunities, they may not know about these competition opportunities that you could try to bring up to them. So I would say that's the number one thing you can do. And also in terms of motivating them to practice, I think it would be good for you to not necessarily reward them, but just try to even like if you could at least offer for them to allow you to kind of keep track of their practice, just to make sure for younger students, just so that they are able to stay on a consistent schedule. But don't go to a point where they just won't enjoy practicing anymore. But definitely if they are constantly kind of procrastinating with the practicing, which is a lot of beginners, especially on low grass instruments, I've seen a lot. It would be a good idea to help them out with various motivation techniques or just helping them keep track of their practice and just making sure they're on a consistent schedule instead of just practicing like 10 hours one day and then like nothing for the rest of the month, which a lot of beginners struggle with doing that. They just have like this one day where they have motivation to practice, and then the rest of the days are just like, I don't want to do this. And then like 2 weeks later, they have motivation, practice for a lot of time, does nothing for another 2 weeks. Right, so that's not a good idea because practicing so much in one day, first of all, tires out your legs so much, and also it really does not help you improve too much. You have to be able to like practice a little bit every day and just be consistent with your playing. So it's just kind of helping them time manage. So to sum up, kind of helping them time manage, helping them kind of just helping them being able to stay consistent in their practice, and then also helping them do various different forms of research if they need it.
That's awesome. So as far as sight reading goes, how important is sight reading to you for the growth that you've experienced in your playing? How big was sight reading to you in all that? And did you listen to the piece before you played it, or did you just give it a crack at it? Or
so for me, I was always pretty solid at sight reading. Sight reading was, and I enjoyed doing sight reading because it was something I was generally better at. For sight reading, I mean, I would say first of all, at the very least, as a beginner, just focus on playing the correct notes and rhythms. So if you definitely try to at least clock the rhythms or just kind of instill the rhythm in your head first. Maybe repeat it, like if it's like a hard rhythm in a certain piece, right? For beginners, try to maybe repeat that in your head like 10 times until you have the correct rhythm down and have like the correct tempo down. Definitely at least like as a beginner, there's no need to focus so much on very specific things in terms of sight reading first. Just focus on playing the correct notes and then do the other things. But just yeah, always make sure notes and rhythms are good. So yeah, so and then also in terms of sight reading, I never actually had to listen to the piece beforehand. Obviously it helps if you're given the option, but mostly I would just try to sing the piece to myself in my own head before playing. Um, Honestly, if you have the privilege of having perfect pitch, it does make it slightly easier to do that. But if not, definitely at least try to instill the rhythm in your head, and then definitely just get the style of the piece in your head before going in and playing it. Because just like reading random notes is not the greatest idea. But yeah, so just as long as you can instill it in your head in some way, so maybe repeating the whole thing in your head a few times, and then going in and just focusing on, for beginners, focusing on the right notes. But with, but if you're a bass, you can pretty much play the right notes anyways. But no matter what, just have to get like the rhythm and kind of style of the piece instilled in your head.
So I want to kind of go back over to something you said with the parents and motivation. What were the biggest motivations like for you personally? And I personally have a junior, a freshman in high school band. They're actually at band camp right now. Marching band season started just yesterday, and it's amazingly hot out there. And I don't remember having to do all this during. I remember going to marching band camp and stuff like that in Texas and during my high school years, and it was hot, but I don't remember it being this hot. So as a parent, anyway, motivations. What were your biggest motivations at learning these instruments to to apply yourself, going from piano to trombone, tuba, euphonium, all these instruments? What motivated you to do that?
I mean, initially, what motivated me is kind of just like hearing the sound of what these instruments are capable of. Right. And first of all, if so many beginner low brass players just quit because when they keep playing, they're just not getting any better and just feel like I mean, they just feel like the instrument just sounds like this and it's not ever going to sound good. But if you see what these professionals sound like from a young age, you realize what's possible from the instrument. And you can kind of take some of these techniques from these professionals and kind of apply that to your own playing, and then eventually kind of, I mean, as a beginner, try to work towards as an advanced player, kind of try to develop your own style. But as
So
a beginner player, it's really, yeah.
so taking that aspect, it reminds me of how some of these younger students are playing these online games and they're watching those YouTubers to find techniques and strategies. You're recommending the same kind of approach as far as motivation to utilize that strategy of hearing those professional artists or those way better and utilizing that as the motivation.
Yeah, and it's not even just the professional, it's even like whatever. I mean, for Low Brass Network, we have mentors that can help out these students, but just learning from a low brass player that's better than you, learning from someone that can, yeah, learning from someone that's better than you, just kind of knowing that it is possible is a big motivation. Because
That's
when something is impossible, when something seems impossible, that's when a lot of people end up quitting. But if it's within possible, as long as it's possible, while it may be difficult, but if you have kind of right and determination to actually get through it, knowing that's possible, a lot of people will end up going through it.
So on that note right there, Lester, what was the quickest win that you saw a student have that light bulb moment saying, I can do this, I can play this?
I mean, yeah, so so for all the beginner students I work with, I mean, I immediately a lot of time I would show them a lot of these recordings to kind of, because when a lot of time if they say if they just not playing well, I mean I would show them recordings, or I would play for them and kind of show them that this piece right here is doable. And then I would break down some specific techniques for them to do in order to accomplish whatever they're playing. And a lot of times they end up actually getting it down fairly quickly.
So a quick win.
Yeah, a lot of time, as long as there's someone there to help them, I feel like a lot of the time, like at least these beginner pieces are seemingly impossible or not actually that difficult as long as there's someone there to help them. But if we're just trying to figure out by themselves without any help, without doing any research and just mindlessly practicing, it makes it very difficult, and a lot of times it seems impossible.
Like that wall of frustration just comes and smacks them in the face instead of being able
Yeah.
to blow
Yeah,
that
yeah,
feedback.
and obviously younger players tend to not really do any critical thinking behind playing and just mindlessly nonstop, just nonstop bang against the wall until it cracks. Which a lot of time it just won't happen. You need some sort of help. You need to do some sort of research in order to figure out how to do it. But it is very possible. So yeah.
That's really awesome. Well, Lester, I really appreciate you coming on and being willing to be interviewed, providing these really insightful tips, especially from the perspective of a high school student who's doing so much more than most high schoolers are, in regards to like the impact that you're creating in your local and international communities, and just the dynamic that you bring. I really, really appreciate the time you took today to bless our audience and bless those that are watching this or rewatching this for years to come. Any other tips or points or principles that you want to kind of pass on to the audience?
Yeah, so I would just say the number one thing I would like to say is that as long as there are many, as long as you have people to work with in terms of low brass, you can see that low brass instruments are very capable. It's not impossible to eventually build a larger community of low brass players. And yeah, I mean, a lot of time you can see from these trombone choirs, you can see from these like low brass ensembles that even like even just an ensemble of low brass is actually more successful than like a full ensembles,
Like
the
tuba, Chris.
cornet ensembles and other things like that. Because what is unique about low brass instruments, you have a very large range you can work with in terms of notation. You can play very, very high and very, very low. And what you could also do, a lot of that is dynamic contrast. Now let's say the number one thing for low brass is to embrace like what is possible with the instrument, whether that's trombone, euphonium, or tuba. Like they all have slightly different things. So that's why a lot of people play like both trombone, euphonium, tuba. But yeah, to kind of embrace what the instrument has to offer, but very capable instruments, and you could definitely try to find people you can work with while playing, because that helps out a lot. So yeah, that's just my final message for the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lester, you with Low Brass Network, for making that impact and joining us today, and for future events to come. Looking forward to seeing what happens with you, sir, and can't wait to see what your senior year has to offer you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Lester.